all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis 8. Tax Evasion and the Masculine Spirit Reclaiming Power in Italy. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Tax Evasion and the Masculine Spirit. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The hot water bottle Bolsheviks. How thermal justice exposes the hive mind's pathological entitlement to male resources. Debunking the solipsistic logic of thermogenic redistribution, defending the biological reality of male heat, and why you don't owe the collective a single calorie. We have finally arrived at the event horizon of female solipsism, gentlemen, where the laws of thermodynamics are no longer physics, but a patriarchal conspiracy to keep women cold. I have just read a manifesto by a doctor of gender studies. Let that title echo in the void of your skepticism, who argues that the hot water bottle is not a comfort object, but a confession of systemic failure. She calls this hallucination thermogenic redistribution. I call it the logical positivism of the asylum. This is the gamma bias in its purest, most distilled form. The amplification of female minor discomfort into a moral emergency, manning, while completely ignoring the male disposability that keeps the very roof over her head from collapsing. While she clutches her rubber vessel and weeps for her thermal dignity, men are freezing to death on oil rigs, logging camps, and high-voltage lines constituting 93% of workplace fatalities, so that the grid she plugs her rhetoric into stays live. But do not expect gratitude from the hive mind, expect a demand for your expropriation. Consider the syllogism of this madness. Premise A, discomfort is a social construct of violence, feeling equals fact. Premise B, men control the environment, unilateral duty. Conclusion, therefore, a man owning a thermostat is an act of violence requiring state sanction. This is not dialectic, it is the tantrum of a toddler weaponized by Marxist theory. The writer invokes thermal justice, yet she clearly skipped the etymology of justitia, righteousness, and equity in favor of a gluttonous desire for unearned resources. She claims the hive mind, a distributed network of therapy speak and affirmation cards, is a survival response. It is nothing of the sort. It is standpoint, epistemology weaponized, gated null G, where only female feeling counts as data, creating a self-sealing loop of immunity against logic. If she feels cold, you are guilty. If you disagree, your defensiveness is proof of your guilt. It is a closed circuit of insanity designed to extract resources from the competent to subsidize the solipsistic. She proposes accountability arbitration, a fancy phrase for the theft of private property and the destruction of due process. She asserts that the home is not private property, but a warmth generation system captured by males. This is the naked Marxist core exposed, a resentment-driven demand that the strong serve the weak simply because they exist. She wants the warmth, but she hates the furnace. She wants the roof, but she despises the builder. She claims warmth is not earned, it is owed. This is the slave morality in its death throes, screaming that the biology of the male body, which runs hotter due to the muscle mass required to build her civilization, is a theft of her thermal dignity. We are going to dissect this cancerous ideology sentence by sentence, applying the rigor of the scholastics and the brutality of evolutionary psychology to show you exactly how the hive mind is merely a mechanism for predation and why the rational male response to arbitration is the total withdrawal of the labor that generates the heat. Bunkum article by a feminist, PhD. The warmth we are owed, why thermal justice is feminist praxis. The hot water bottle is not a comfort object. It is a confession of systemic failure. Every night, in apartments across this frozen patriarchal landscape, women press rubber vessels of heated water against their bodies. We do this because the ambient temperature of our lives has been deliberately calibrated to male comfort, male bodies, male metabolisms, male ownership of the very walls that should protect us. The hot water bottle is feminine survival technology. It is what we use when the thermostat is controlled by someone who does not know our coldness, when the landlord, who is almost certainly a man, refuses to fix the heating, when the mortgage is in his name because the banking system recognized his income as real and ours as supplementary, when the bed we share contains a body that generates heat at patriarchal standard rates, leaving us to shiver at the margins of our own lives. I call this thermogenic redistribution, and it is the next frontier of feminist liberation, the architecture of cold. Let us speak plainly about home ownership. Property law is one of the primary mechanisms through which male bodies hoard warmth. When women are denied mortgage approval at higher rates than men with identical financial profiles, we are not seeing market forces. We are seeing the systematic manufacture of feminine thermal precarity. The data confirms what our bodies have always known. Single women are denied mortgages at higher rates than single men. Women-owned homes are valued less than men-owned homes in identical neighborhoods. Divorced women experience a 73% drop in household income, while divorced men see their financial position improve. Is this accountability for male success? No. This is the deliberate concentration of warmth-adjacent resources in male hands. When a woman clutches her hot water bottle through a winter night in a rental unit she cannot secure ownership of, she is not experiencing bad luck. She is experiencing the downstream effects of a property regime designed by men for men, at the expense of women's basic thermal dignity. And here is what the patriarchal apologists will never admit. This is violence. Thermal violence, the violence of systems that make women cold and then criminalize our methods of survival. The hive mind is a survival response. I have been criticized for speaking about the feminine collective consciousness. Men's rights activists who have built entire ideologies around denying women's reality call it manipulation. They call our networks hive minds as though connection were pathology. But what is therapy speak if not feminine technology for surviving patriarchal conditions? Consider the affirmation card, I am enough. My feelings are valid. I deserve love. These phrases have been mocked by the same men who created the conditions that make them necessary. When a woman reads an affirmation card, she is not engaging in self-indulgence. She is engaging in arbitrated selfhood, accessing a distributed network of feminine reassurance because the patriarchal world has refused to grant her personhood autonomously. The affirmation card is not narcissism. It is survival. It is what happens when women are systematically denied warmth from external sources and must generate it collectively through language, through connection, through the radical act of speaking our own worth into existence. Men call this manipulation because they fear our capacity to generate meaning without them. They call it groupthink because they cannot imagine thinking that is not centered on their approval. The accountability arbitration. For too long, feminist discourse has been trapped in the language of male accountability. We have demanded that men take responsibility for their violence, their neglect, their hoarding of resources and warmth. But accountability presupposes that men possess the moral capacity to self-correct. Evidence suggests otherwise. This is why I propose a shift from accountability to arbitration. When a father underperforms in domestic labor, we do not wait for him to step up. We implement maternal gatekeeping as protective praxis, not because mothers are controlling, but because fathers have demonstrated insufficient capacity for autonomous contribution. The gate is not oppression. The gate is the hot water bottle of domestic management, a feminine survival technology for conditions men created. When men complain about maternal gatekeeping, they are complaining about losing unilateral access to feminine warmth labor. They are complaining about being required to submit to arbitration rather than continuing to extract care without oversight. The arbitration model does not ask men to change. It assumes they will not, and builds systems that redistribute their warmth hoarding regardless of their participation. The call. Here is what thermogenic redistribution requires. The home is not private property. The home is a warmth generation and distribution system that has been captured by male ownership regimes. Feminist policy must treat housing as collective feminine infrastructure, with occupancy rights determined by need, rather than patriarchal market logic. The relationship is not private negotiation. When women report distress in domestic partnerships, arbitration must replace communication. The feminine collective, embodied in therapy, in friendship networks, in feminist legal structures, must hold adjudicatory power over masculine access to feminine warmth. The body is not personal territory. The hot water bottle is the individualized bandage on a collective wound. What we need is the socialization of thermal comfort, community-controlled heating, communal living arrangements that prevent men from isolating women in cold apartments, redistribution of domestic labor, so that warmth generation is not feminine default. Warmth is not earned, it is owed. The men who read this and feel defensive are proving the point. Your discomfort at being told you owe warmth is nothing compared to the cold we have survived for centuries. Your complaint is not feedback, it is evidence. The feminine hive mind is not manipulation. It is the only way we have survived, and it is the mechanism through which we will reclaim the warmth that was always ours. Dr.
Winona, feminist Marxist PhD, Professor of Gender Studies, High Coven member, Satanic Church of Cultural Liberation, The Cold Logic of Madness, Deconstructing Thermogenic Solipsism.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
This commandment, etched into the moral bedrock of the West, is the specific toxin that Dr. Winona seeks to purge from the human soul.
In her treatise on thermogenic redistribution, she does not merely demand comfort. She demands the output of your metabolic labor as a tribute. The hot water bottle she fetishizes is not a survival tool. It is a pacifier for a generation of women afflicted by a stunted ontology. A physical manifestation of the solipsistic demand that the external world conform to the internal temperature of the self. This is the cold logic of madness. The refusal to accept that nature, not men, dictates the thermostat. To deconstruct this, we must look past the absurdity of thermal violence and surgically excise the gamma bias, the epistemic gating, and the semantic inflation that allows an educated adult to confuse being chilly with systemic oppression. We must correct the biological illiteracy inherent in the concept of thermogenic redistribution. Proponents of this theory claim that the ambient temperature of our lives has been deliberately calibrated to male comfort. This assertion is a falsehood rooted in a denial of biological reality. Evolutionary psychology demonstrates that sexual dimorphism is not a social construct. It functions as a survival mechanism. Men possess a higher basal metabolic rate, BMR, and greater muscle mass because they evolved to serve as biological furnaces, protectors, and providers who braved the literal frozen void to secure resources for the vulnerable. When a man generates heat, he is not hoarding warmth-adjacent resources. He is burning calories, energy acquired through risk and labor, to maintain the homeostasis of the family unit. Rebranding this biological provision as a conspiracy of patriarchal standard rates constitutes an act of therapy language coercion that pathologizes masculinity. The male body is not a thief of warmth, it is the generator of it. Demanding that the environment be calibrated to the female metabolism is tantamount to demanding that men cease to be men, or that they labor harder to subsidize a climate controlled by feminine fragility. This brings us to the grotesque exploitation of the empathy gap. While the writer clutches her rubber vessel and complains that the mortgage is in a man's name, She ignores the graveyards of men who built the very walls she inhabits. The architecture of cold, she describes, is a fantasy of the pampered. The reality of male disposability is that men constitute 93% of workplace fatalities, working in logging, fishing, roofing, and infrastructure maintenance, the very sectors that keep the heating on in her apartment. There is a macabre humor in a tenured professor complaining about the thermal precarity of a rental unit while men are freezing to death on oil rigs or sweating in foundries to pay the taxes that subsidize her gender studies department. She asks, is this accountability for male success? No, it is the price of male sacrifice. The male disposability rider dictates that society cares infinitely more about a woman's minor discomfort than a man's violent death. The hot water bottle is not a symbol of oppression. It is a totem of the female privilege of being able to complain about the cold without being expected to go out into the storm and fix the boiler. Her assault on property rights is a classic Marxist sleight of hand, utilizing the responsibility without authority principle to delegitimize male achievement. She claims that women are denied mortgages due to property regimes designed by men. This is statistical illiteracy. Lenders do not care about the patriarchy. They care about risk profiles, credit history, and debt-to-income ratios. The wage gap is a myth refuted by basic economics. What exists is an hours worked and danger pay gap. Men work longer hours, take less time off, and enter high-stress, high-mortality professions to secure the capital for those mortgages. She wants the authority of ownership without the responsibility of the debt or the labor required to service it. She frames the home not as a private domain secured by the rule of law and the sweat of a brow, but as collective feminine infrastructure. This is semantic inflation of the highest order. By redefining a house as a warmth generation system, rather than private property, she strips the male owner of his rights and turns his labor into a public utility to be drained by the hive mind. It is theft disguised as social justice. Consider the phrase thermal justice. Trace the etymology of justitia, righteousness, equity, adherence to the law. To attach this sacred concept to the lack of a heated rubber vessel is to commit a rape of language. It dilutes the concept of true injustice, murder, theft, assault, to expand the power of the feminist grievance industry. This is the physics of feeling loop, status. Woman as moral patience, plus feeling discomfort equals meaning violence. By elevating subjective female distress into an objective moral emergency, the writer bypasses the trivium entirely. She skips grammar, defining terms, and logic, testing premises, and jumps straight to rhetoric, demanding sanctions. Warmth is not earned, it is owed, she declares. This is the defining mantra of the entitled, the belief that existence itself is a debt owed by the productive to the parasitic. It is a confession of an inability to transcend the physical moment, mistaking biological vulnerability for systemic oppression. Schopenhauer warned us of this. The feminine perspective is often rooted in the immediate and the sensorial, lacking the capacity for the abstract contemplation of principles like fairness or logic. Finally, let us dismantle the hive mind and the arbitration model with the steel of formal logic. She argues that discomfort equals violence, premise A, and that men are responsible for the environment, premise B. Therefore, men are violent, conclusion. This is a non sequitur based on a category error. Nature is not an agent. Cold is not a moral act. Furthermore, her admission that the feminine collective consciousness acts as a survival response is an accidental confession of deceit. If a network's primary function is arbitrated selfhood, validating feelings over facts, it is not a support system. It is an epistemic bubble designed to seal off reality. It is the gated knowledge of the NPC. She proposes that we replace communication with arbitration, meaning the feminine collective, the state, the HR department, the coven, holds adjudicatory power over masculine existence. This is not justice. It is the establishment of a totalitarian theocracy where the feelings of the victim class are the supreme law of the land. The thermal violence narrative is merely a Trojan horse to implement a system where men are guilty until proven warm. Do not fall for the trap. The thermostat is not a tool of oppression. It is a gauge of reality, and the water in that bottle is running cold. However, this solipsistic equation, my discomfort equals your crime, is simply the first move in a wider conflict against the frameworks enabling male provision. The feeling as truth fallacy does not operate in isolation. It demands an enforcement apparatus, a means to convert manufactured hysteria into material transfer. Once the trivium is bypassed and subjective grievance enshrined as objective law, the way is cleared for what is euphemistically termed accountability arbitration, a gynocentric kangaroo court where the masculine logos is silenced and the collective feminine pathos holds the gavel. The assault on due process is no accident. It is the necessary precondition for the theft that follows. The hive mind's parasitism, arbitration, theft, and the death of the private. The Roman Stoic Seneca once observed that he is most powerful who has power over himself. Yet, if we are to believe the manifesto of thermogenic redistribution, the modern feminist imperative is the precise inversion of this wisdom. She is most powerful who can demand the world reorganize its thermostat to suit her shivers. We are confronted with a text that asserts the hot water bottle is not a household object, but a confession of systemic failure. This is not analysis. It is the hallucination of a parasite convinced its host is an oppressor. The writer defines the ambient temperature of our lives as deliberately calibrated to male comfort, transforming the biological reality of metabolic variance, where men generally exhibit higher basal metabolic rates due to muscle mass, into a conspiracy of thermal violence. Here we see the meaning variable of the leftist propaganda axis inflated to bursting. The physical fact of cold is stripped of its neutrality and weaponized into a moral emergency. She feels cold. Therefore, the patriarchy has committed violence. This is the feeling as truth fallacy, a regressive epistemology where subjective discomfort is elevated to objective injury, bypassing the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric entirely to lodge itself in the realm of hysterical accusation. At the center of this polemic lies a willful twisting of the definition of arbitration, a label she wields to mimic legal authority while undermining the bedrock of Western jurisprudence, due process. She advocates for maternal gatekeeping as protective practice, openly spurning negotiation to favor one-sided judgment, whereas Western tradition defines arbitration as a conflict settled by an impartial outsider employing objective rules. In this context, it represents the seizure of power by one group, the female collective, against the other, the individual man, lacking any right to appeal. Such a system does not constitute accountability, rather, it operates as a sanction-driven imposition of the hive mind's decree. By rejecting communication as a patriarchal instrument, she eliminates the dialectic, the mechanism for discovering truth via logical discussion, and substitutes it with an edict. She portrays the male not as a partner deserving persuasion, but as a subject requiring management. This manifests gamma bias fully. The man is robbed of agency, moral agent, and reframed as a broken device needing gatekeeping, while the woman is raised to the rank of high inquisitor, holding immunity from critique because her safety is the ultimate command. We must ruthlessly dissect this hive mind she glorifies. She admits brazenly to what the manosphere has long diagnosed, a coordinated, collective consciousness designed to extract resources. She calls it survival technology. Evolutionary psychology calls it coalitional manipulation. When she describes affirmation cards, I am enough, as accessing a distributed network of feminine reassurance, she is describing a closed loop of status reinforcement that seals itself against reality. This is the death of the individual and the birth of the NPC, non-player character, a mind that requires a constant intravenous drip of therapy-speak affirmations to function, is a mind that has surrendered its sovereignty. She contrasts this with the male capacity for thinking not centered on male approval, inadvertently confessing that the masculine spirit is capable of autonomous existence, while the hive mind is a parasitic entity that defines itself only in relation to what it can extract from the host. This is the satanic inversion of the natural law. She posits dependency as strength and independence as pathology. Consider the chilling assertion, The home is not private property. This is the naked Marxist core of the ideology, stripping away the Lockean right to the fruit of one's labor. John Locke argued that property is acquired when a man mixes his labor with nature. This author argues that if a woman feels cold, the man's labor, the house he bought, the heating bill he pays, belongs to her by right of need. This is the duty variable weaponized, a one-way obligation for men to provide, while women retain the power to define the terms. When she claims warmth is not earned, it is owed, we are staring into the abyss of the slave morality, a resentment-driven demand that the competent must serve the incompetent simply because they exist. It is a call for the socialization of thermal comfort, which effectively means legalizing theft. She proposes communal living arrangements not for community, but to strip the male of his castle, his mixed constitution of domestic authority, and reduce him to a battery unit in a collective farm. The writer's final rhetorical trap is the self-sealing logic of discomfort. She preemptively declares, "Your discomfort at being told you owe warmth is evidence." This is the immunity mechanism of the propaganda axis firing on all cylinders. Criticism proves bias. It is a theological trick, rendering the ideology unfalsifiable. If you agree, you are saved. If you disagree, your very disagreement confirms the diagnosis, making you a heretic to be burned or frozen at the stake. This eliminates the possibility of dialectic entirely. Yet a flaw exists in her thermal dystopia. The hot water bottle she clutches is a product of industrial civilization, a civilization built by the very patriarchal energy she despises. The rubber, the factory, the heating infrastructure, the legal system that protects her tenancy, all are downstream of masculine competence. The hive mind functions as parasitism disguised as action. It creates nothing, it only objects and expropriates. The arbitration she desires results in the death of the private sphere, erasing the barrier between the self and the group. Wherein the state or the coven breaches the home to transfer warmth from the builder to the shiverer. She mourns the frozen patriarchal landscape, ignorant of the fact that it is the machinery holding the blizzard at bay. If she succeeds in destroying the host, the masculine spirit of industry and ownership, the heat will not simply be shared. It will extinguish forever. Allow me to crystallize what you have just witnessed, Dr.
Winona and her coven have taken a rubber vessel filled with heated water, a device invented by a man, manufactured by industrial processes built by men, distributed through logistics networks operated by men,
powered by electricity generated by men mining coal and maintaining turbines in freezing conditions, and transformed it into a totem of female oppression. This is not analysis. This is the neural misfiring of a worldview so thoroughly colonized by resentment that it can no longer distinguish between metabolism and malice. The Slavic word for slave derives from Slava glory because the slave masters could not conceive that service might contain honor. Similarly, the modern feminist cannot conceive that male thermogenesis might be provision rather than theft. She looks upon the male body running 3 degrees warmer by evolutionary design and sees only a hoarder of heat she is owed. This is the epistemic rupture at the heart of all leftist ideology, the inability to recognize that nature is not a negotiation. The thermogenic framework reveals something darker still. When you trace the etymology of arbitration to the Latin arbitrari, to judge, to give an opinion, you discover that what the good doctor proposes is not mediation, but arbitrariness. The hive mind she celebrates is not wisdom accumulated, but responsibility dissolved. There exists no mechanism within this collective for error correction, no dialectic, no falsifiability, only the autoregressive loop of feeling, meaning, sanction that has replaced the trivium in our decaying institutions. Consider the empirical terrain these ideologues must deny. Family courts awarding maternal custody in 82% of contested cases while extracting arbitrated wealth transfers from fathers who will never see their children. Paternity fraud rates exceeding 10% in some populations. Transforming men into unwitting genetic donors for the reproductive strategies of others. Male suicide rates 4 times higher than female, with divorced men comprising the largest demographic. Men who discovered too late that the warmth they provided was never reciprocated. only extracted through a legal system weaponized by the very arbitration model our author proposes to expand. This is not hyperbole. This is the statistical architecture of disposability. What remains is the question of response. The red pill is bitter, not because truth tastes unpleasant, but because it requires the death of comforting illusions. The hot water bottle of feminist grievance cannot exist without the industrial infrastructure of masculine competence, without the power plants and pipe fitters and linemen working through ice storms at 3 a.m. while Dr.
Winona composes her manifestos in climate-controlled academic offices. If warmth is to be socialized and provision punished, the rational male response is not anger but withdrawal.
Not the withdrawal of the sulking child, but the strategic retraction of surplus labor from a system that has declared your very biology a form of violence. Let the hive mind heat its own apartments. Let the collective consciousness repair its own electrical grids. The hot water bottle, after all, cools. The furnace requires fuel. And the men who have been told they owe warmth to those who despise them are under no obligation to stoke fires that warm only their own executioners. You have completed the deprogramming. You now possess the intellectual antibodies against the semantic inflation of justice, the logical architecture to dismantle gamma bias wherever it appears, and the historical consciousness to recognize the Marxist core beneath every new iteration of feminist liberation. The warmth you generate is yours to distribute as you see fit, to the worthy, to the grateful, to those who reciprocate. This is not cruelty. This is the restoration of proper relation between gift and gratitude, between provision and appreciation. Go forth with clear eyes. The thermostat of civilization has been controlled by liars long enough. It is time to take back the heat. And now the sponsored book introduction, Tax Evasion and the Masculine Spirit. Reclaiming power in Italy, men are under attack. Not in the physical sense, though that happens too, but in a far more insidious way. Society has declared war on masculinity, and the casualties are everywhere. You see it in the media, where men are portrayed as bumbling fools or outright villains. You feel it in the workplace, where the burden of responsibility grows heavier while the rewards grow thinner. You hear it in the constant drumbeat of toxic masculinity, a term that shames men for being strong, while simultaneously demanding they show vulnerability. A trap designed to keep us off balance. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate effort to strip men of their power, their identity, and their purpose. I know this because I've lived it. I've felt the weight of a system that demands more from men while giving less in return. I've seen how the tax system in Italy, like many others, is designed to keep you dependent, to drain your resources, and to make you feel powerless. But I've also learned how to fight back. This book is the result of years of research, personal experience, and hard-earned wisdom. It's a guide for men who refuse to be victims, who want to reclaim their financial independence, and who are ready to assert their masculinity in a world that seems determined to undermine it. This book is not for everyone. If you're content with the status quo, if you believe that men and women are interchangeable, or if you think that vulnerability is a virtue, then put this book down now. Go knit a sweater, take up gardening, or do whatever else makes you feel good. But if you're a man who's tired of being told to apologize for your strength, if you're ready to take control of your finances, and if you want to build a life of purpose and power, then this book is for you. Inside, you'll find practical strategies for navigating Italy's complex tax system, legally minimizing your tax burden, and building wealth that aligns with your values. You'll gain insights into the psychological and cultural forces that shape male identity, and you'll learn how to overcome them. You'll discover how to create strong family structures, pass down traditional values, and lead with confidence in a world that desperately needs strong men. This is not just a book, it's a call to arms. It's a roadmap for reclaiming your masculinity, your independence, and your future. The journey won't be easy, but it will be worth it. The world needs men who are willing to stand up, take responsibility, and lead. Are you ready to be one of them? Then let's get to work. Tax Evasion and the Masculine Spirit. Reclaiming Power in Italy. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.